So, functional programming made easier. So, I got the go ahead from Charles that we can like work on this book on stream, and so we're going to do that. This is a beginner functional programming book, but it does go. We'll look at the index here in a second. Or table of contents. It goes to like pretty complicated stuff, but it's quite a big book, as you can see. It's like almost 2,000 pages. So, but I really want to go through this because I don't have any beginner content on my YouTube, and so I think it would be really great to have this book as part of my YouTube content. So, also, you might notice I'm streaming in the morning. This is going to be like a new thing that I'm trying out where I stream before work instead of after work so that I can actually stream during the week. Now, will I be able to handle this? I don't know. So, we'll see. All right. So, yeah, I put this code or well, like I'm going to put this code on online, and also there's a command in chat like if you want to go get the links for the book, you can get the book from LeanPub. And you know, Charles put a lot of work into this, so it's up to you if you wanna how much money you want to give him. Um, and like one of the things that I would like to accomplish from this is, should I recommend this to new people to functional programming as like the first book that they read? So that's kind of like the goal, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so let's look at the index real quick. There's some learning stuff like learning functional programming is hard. Okay, why should we do functional programming? What's the barrier to entry? What's the cost of ownership? Oh, that's kind of interesting. There's like case studies, and then like these are interesting sections: finding job, finding developers. This book is for us, but we'll probably go through this. I don't really know what from A to Z means, and then we'll talk a bit about Purescript versus other languages, and then like, oh wait, this is we're gonna do that in 13 pages. I guess this is like just the beginner stuff, and then we'll probably go into like real content. Okay, cool. So today might be a bit of like just kind of skimming and having a discussion. Um, but like, yeah, you can see like the first 200 pages or so are like writing relatively simple functions, which I think is like actually a really good thing. And then we'll start working on type classes. Yeah, we're gonna start with Hello World at some point, and then we go into like more mathematical stuff, which I think is interesting. So like we start talking about abstract algebra, which is pretty cool. I don't really have a great. I mean, I know what a magma is, so that's cool, I guess. But you know, I don't know that this is necessary to learn functional programming, but it is interesting, so that's cool. Folds are incredibly useful. Functors are useful. More functors, and then we go into advanced stuff, which is like applicative, traversable, alternatives, all useful. Monads, which are like what people talk about all the time when we do this stuff. And then we get into monad stacks, which is like super popular, and then we keep going. Effects, cool. JSON, Ajax, cool. FFI, which is something that I'm not familiar with in Purescript, so this is a section that I definitely want to go through. I don't know what the HTT pure is, so that could be interesting. And then we'll learn a bit about halogen, which is cool. So like, there's a ton of stuff in this book, so that's the point. Ton of stuff, and a lot of it's like it goes from very beginner to like pretty advanced. Like you're actually writing like halogen code, for example, and that's pretty difficult. So let me just make this full screen, and we'll just kind of like read through some of this real quick. Oh geez, that's big. I'm not gonna show a ton of the book on stream. Like, I think once I get past some of the beginning stuff, I'll probably hide the text. Um, but like when we're doing this first chapter, it's really awkward when I'm just sitting there reading to you. It's like I'm an audio book or something. So we'll just look at this. Okay, so failed many times to learn Haskell. So I should preface this with I am a Haskell programmer every day. So like my experience level is quite a bit further than beginning Purescript, but I still think that this is useful to go over, and then hopefully I can provide some like tidbits as we go along that are useful. Maybe I can't. I don't know. We'll see. The granddaddy of all functional programming languages. Okay, but not before trying to do them in JavaScript and not before learning Elm. Elm is another Haskell-looking language that's incredibly useful. It's just not. It doesn't have as many language features as Purescript, which is why this book can exist. I think that it would be hard for this book to exist if it was using Elm. Okay. Yep. Okay. I didn't know there was a citation for this, but that's kind of interesting. Oh, they're defining imperative programming, not a citation for functional programming. It's more advanced than imperative programming. It's kind of funny. Okay. No definitive guide to turn from an everyday programmer who writes like Python into a functional programmer. I would agree. Like a lot of the books accelerate very quickly, and I guess this is supposed to be a little more friendly. Yeah, there's tons of books out there. Very true. Um, if you there's a free books and there's other books that you can buy. So again, I'm not ready to recommend this book, but I've heard it's okay. Yep. Yeah. Like always ask the community. That's very helpful. Okay. Yeah, this is like a common thing people will say is like to learn functional programming, you have to unlearn imperative programming, and like I've effectively done that um over the past few years. Does that actually work? Like does that list actually or this thing actually work? Oh gosh. Yeah, it does. Look at that. It's mostly just there's not a ton going on in there. Anyway. All right. Yep. Get out the bread, then the mustard, then apply the mustard to the bread. This is a very imperative way of thinking. Do okay. Do Hey Sour, how's it going? Think like a math. See, so like this is just a comment from my standpoint. Like I was kind of a mathematician, so I think that that's why functional programming clicked with me so well. Oh no, that actually allows you to run it. I shouldn't allow that one to be run. That's kind of funny. Oh well. Um, I was a mathematician, so thinking imperatively was actually quite hard for me. And then thinking functionally is quite a bit easier. And like, I don't feel like my brain is jumping through hoops to understand the code in front of me. So I think that this may be like, this could be a much weirder jump for other people than for me specifically. But, that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Uh, how's it going, Skybro? We got Sour and Skybro in the house. Okay. Learn a skill, yeah. Yeah, I guess I wasn't doing like mathematical proofs or anything, but like I was doing math, so maybe that's different. Like, there's like application of mathematics. Cool. Skybro's learning math, by the way. Okay. No proof is wrong. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Super great point. Like, you don't need to be a mathematician. It's just like thinking carefully about how you write programs and sort of, you can write functional programs in any language, really. You just need to be more disciplined in other languages. Like Haskell kind of forces you to write FP, and I would guess that Purescript is probably the same. Well, not probably. I'm pretty sure it's the same. So, yeah. Anyway, okay. So, why functional programming? We'll see if this is like. I think it's hard to motivate this oftentimes, and I always have trouble. Um, I always have trouble like telling people why I like functional programming. So let's see if this is good. I feel like Will Kurt's book was fantastic at explaining why you should do functional programming. And so I think that's a free chapter from his book. And so if you want to read that one as well, I think it's worth checking out. Will Kurt. I think it's just called Get Programming with Haskell. And the first chapter is very good. Okay. Um, Church Turing isomorphism. Which one is this? More details, Daniel. Maybe I've heard of that. Okay. Um, Many attempts to answer this question, but I'm going to take a different tact. Instead, I'm going to tell you the things I value. Okay. I value software whose behavior can be easily reasoned about by simply reading the code. Oh yeah, yeah. I've definitely. I guess I just don't know it as the Church Turing isomorphism. So I guess there's a isomorphism or a proof that says like imperative and functional programming are like can be transformed within one another. Yeah. So yeah, I mean this is like an obvious statement. I feel like. Um, oh, maybe not obvious. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of obvious. Like if you can't do this, then like what's the point? Like you're failing in some way. Um, yeah. So this is like one of the things that maybe not immediate obvious. Like programming with static types is really important to me. Like other people have suggested, like I learn Clojure, for example, because it's like a functional programming language that's a Lisp, but like static typing saves you from a lot of like really silly errors. So I kind of agree with this, but like also disagree with this because like you can do really fun testing things in functional programs, which like quick check is amazing. For example, property tests and um, generative tests and things like this. Anyway, powerful abstractions that allow me to get a lot of work done with very little effort. Yes, 100% agree. For example, like understanding that functors exist is just like a huge thing that everyone uses all the time, and like just knowing that they're there is super helpful. Beauty in code and design, I 100% agree with this too. I find, for example, C languages really hard to read. I was literally talking about this yesterday with somebody, but Haskell and PureScript are like so terse and beautiful in my opinion. But I don't. This is kind of a. I mean, these are opinions, right? They're values, so they're not necessarily truths. Reduction or a complete elimination of boilerplate code. Uh, I guess we'll have to see what he means by this because I don't feel like I've completely removed my boilerplate code, but I'm not exactly sure what is meant by this. Maybe he'll expand a bit further. Reusable code, obviously important. Confidence in code correctness, obviously important. Elimination of unnecessary complexity. Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with this. I don't know what is again. I hope that there's some elaboration here. I'm not exactly sure what he's going for. Some of these are, I think, more obvious to like my understanding of Purescript and Haskell, and coding mostly the happy path. And I agree with this too. Okay, cool. So can I imagine we all want powerful tools? Mm-hmm. I was just talking about this with somebody else, like, uh, you know, in untyped languages and unchecked languages, you can have typos that, I mean, maybe they're relatively easy to find, but still, like, they could take production down for a non-trivial amount of time, and that's not good for your business and your happiness or your stress levels. Okay, agreed. Yeah. They're probably running around behind me, right? Okay. Um. Do. That's kind of interesting to think about. I guess um, I just don't think about this very often. What is this citation? I'm curious. Oh, that's cool. I actually really like this. This whatever this is, the links popping up, so I can quickly read them. Yeah, I hope this is true. Like, I really hope this is true. I feel like it. This. Oh yeah, this is a big book. This is a big boy. Um, so yeah, it's gonna take us a while to get through it, but like a lot of it's kind of I know a lot of it, so I think that hopefully we can like quickly go through some of the examples that are uh, easier, and then maybe have discussions about like the code that we end up writing. Hopefully, but yeah, so I think that this is actually becoming slowly more true. Like FP is being picked up by more and more languages. Um, you know, I think that there are these concepts in almost every major programming language. Whether or not people use them is a different story, but they are there. So that's kind of cool. You can't describe an experience. You had to be there. Yeah, this is kind of how I feel sometimes as well. Like it's kind of hard to explain why I'm so happy writing Haskell. Yep, me too. 100%. And further on top of this statement, I would never choose a non-statically typed language over a statically typed one. Like I just wouldn't do it. Um, yeah, I think that's maybe a more difficult opinion to press in this book, but we'll see. Pressed. Same, very much same. Like I literally switched careers because I enjoy writing uh functional programming so much. I like PHP. Untyped and imperative. I mean, teach their own. Yeah, I mean, I agree with this, but well, not terrible, I guess, but it's hard to explain this for sure. Very cool. No, I mean, I guess I haven't done like chemistry in quite a while now. When I was working at my previous job, which I did for like 4 years, and I've been at this current job for about 10 months. Um, the previous job, I really didn't do that much chemistry. It was mostly just like high performance computing and like making software run, not so much like doing science. I'm a software engineer now for Mercury. I don't bake actually, but that's a good point. Okay. So barrier to entry. JavaScript probably has the lowest barrier to entry of all programming languages because it's already installed on every computer inside of every browser. I mean, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. Stack Overflow is a weird place. I would agree with this. I remember I remember getting like roasted on Stack Overflow trying to like help other people, and I was like, why don't you just use this library? Don't suggest people use libraries on Stack Overflow. Like, just write the nastiest code that you can in the simplest way possible. That's been my experience so far. Oh, yeah. So Mercury.com. This is where I work. Well, this is the dark mode version, but we like that's what it looks like. Put that back though. Okay. It's a yeah, bank for startups. Okay. Yes, that is what I am doing. Uh okay, so I'm not making an argument for why not functional programming, which would be true if not for one very important thing, cost of ownership. And I would agree with that. An architect of banks. Well, that would be a very different job. That would be cool. Um, okay. One thing that people dismiss when buying new cars is the cost of owning a new car. I think a used car would probably make more sense in this analogy, but I guess you could think of like, okay, so let's pretend we bought a Honda Civic, and then we'll pretend we bought a BMW. The trick with BMWs is you have to put premium fuel in them. So there is an additional cost to owning that car because, you know, the Civic will take any gas on Earth. Okay, so when deciding between different cars, most people consider the initial upfront cost. Sure. Sure. Okay. So case study, JavaScript. So, yeah, like I think this is an important point. Like this happened to me when I first started because I was kind of forced to write Fortran, which is not a great example, but like an imperative program, a programming language, and then I ended up switching to Python because it was like so easy. But then I got to a point where uh, the cost of ownership of Python was just too high. Like it frustrated me all the time. So I feel like I have kind of a similar experience here, except replacing Java with Fortran and JavaScript with Python. So tyrannical. It's actually kind of funny. Like um, this paragraph is just me. Like this was my path. So that's kind of funny to me. uh, wow, that's great. So I should mention like the first chapters are always like this, where either I'm reading a book to you or you're watching me read a book. So I apologize if this first one's kind of boring. There's really not much I can do about it. Like we don't start coding until some of the later chapters, and we just got to get through this content. So um, I'm just trying to make as many comments that hopefully are useful as I can. And if you have questions, obviously feel free to ask. Yep. Yeah, I'm doing back end stuff. There's a bunch of jobs for Mercury for front end and back end people if anyone is interested. I tried to suggest a few people. Hey Lumi, how's it going? Okay. Mm-hmm. Test driven development. I still like test driven development for what it's worth. I think it's fun that way. Especially when you're doing certain things, but like you shouldn't have to test against like basic runtime errors. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. Uh, it describes my experience quite well. Yep. One time upfront cost. Lumi, subscribe with Prime. Thank you so much. So I should mention, I do have this command now, and I've decided to do this recently. Every donation or dollar that ends up in my wallet because of Twitch, I'm just going to give it to the Haskell Foundation. So if you have those Twitch primes, take your money from Bezos and give it to Haskell. Okay. Uh, Feel free to hit those primes. But if you like are considering hitting the subscribe button and paying me money, you can just give it to the Haskell Foundation instead. But that's the plan. Thank you so much, Daniel. I really appreciate that. Well, Haskell appreciates that, I guess. So yeah, go Haskell. All right. Anyway, compiler errors. Yeah, this is like a common complaint, and I think, and one of the interesting things about Elm is that the compiler errors in Elm are amazing. It's pretty rare that you get a really tough to understand compiler error. The ones in Purescript are a bit harder, and probably even harder than Haskell at times. Okay. Do. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Just seemed to work. This is the a pretty classic trope in Haskell. You'll say if it compiles, it works, and like amazingly, a lot of times that's true. There are particular gotchas where that's not true, but like I feel like this is pretty amazing at times. Usually, you've just compiled the wrong program. Like it still does the right. Well, it does something. It just didn't do what you wanted it to do. But you had a correct program in some regard. Is that true though? I guess it's probably like I feel like it exists on that a spectrum kind of between the two. I don't know. I've not written enough Rust to make that comment, but I have heard people say something like that before. Like if you came from Haskell, it might make sense to try Rust over C++, for example. I haven't written C++ in a long time. I lost my train of thought, so let me read this again. Easily reason about their code. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. The powerful abstractions part totally makes sense to me, and like, we're gonna be given even more powerful abstractions when we do Purescript. So, cool. Okay. I think that we'll skip finding developers because like you know, this is probably not why you're picking up this book. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. It's hard to say. But I think the general idea here is that there aren't as many functional programmers as imperative ones. But I think that functional programmers are way more uh like they would love to do functional programming over their imperative jobs. So you just got to find them. I think finding jobs is probably more important and very interesting because, like, if you pick up this 2,000 page book, you better get something out of it. And I think your marketability in the job market would make a lot of sense, or just for fun. I mean, like that's why I do things. So uh, I don't know. I guess it did get me a job, so I don't think that's entirely true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. This is like this is good, and I hope this is true. I do. I really do. I think like just because we were talking about, well, kind of talking about Rust, I guess like Rust is being picked up by a pretty good number of greenfield type projects, right? So, and like you could write pretty functional code in Rust, from what I understand. Could be wrong. Anyway, I vaguely remember. I think Jabby Jabby was trying to pick up COBOL for this reason. I can't remember though. I don't know if he ended up actually using it like professionally. Kind of interesting. Anyway, artificial intelligence, finance. Just say no. Yeah. So, like, I'm working in the finance industry. There's a good amount of Haskell there. I think web services and web applications. Maybe the percentage is pretty low, but they're still there. Yep. I know that they do. I don't know what IBM does, but I mean, I don't know what they do with functional programming, is what I'm saying. Uh, I have vaguely heard this. Like NVIDIA is writing like an FP style language or like a declarative language for their GPUs. Obviously, SPJ works at Microsoft, although I guess I don't know if he's moving on from Microsoft. I literally read that yesterday. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, that's always nice too. Like I think this is like a good way to say this. Like having more tools in your toolbox is not a bad thing. And I do think that like just learning functional programming is like a really great way to expand your thinking. So, okay. Anyway, nice. That's us. Any students in the chat? I guess Skybro's in the chat. He's a student. This is a funny take. I feel like they just want to appreciate the benefits. Like I feel like I've heard a bunch of people who will stop by the stream and they'll say, I did Haskell in college and it was really fun. I liked it a lot better. Um, but then they like moved on and just continued doing OOP. I don't know, 2 years. Okay, I was kind of surprised by this actually. Um I wasn't expecting this as like a requirement, but like maybe this is true for most people trying to learn Purescript, so it's not really um it's not really that concerning. I was kind of hoping that this was going to be like a grounds up approach. Um, but maybe, you know, maybe there's still enough here to for that to be okay. Does that make sense? Like, we'll have to see. I'm kind of interested in this. Okay, cool. Um, from A to Z. I don't really know what this means yet. So, I purchased thousands of books. I think this is true for me too, which is kind of unfortunate, but I don't know that I'm in thousands of dollars yet, but I have an addiction to buying books. It's not an addiction. I should be careful about using that term. Okay, chapter one, your ABCs, chapter two, your one, two, threes, and then differential calculus. Yeah, like this is incredibly problematic and frustrating when you're reading a book. It's like you learn super basics and then all of a sudden it explodes in complexity. And it's really, really frustrating as a reader when you buy the book and then it just doesn't like get you to where you want to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reading books. Yeah. How's it going, unavailable user? Really? You find reading books boring? I love reading books, especially like programming books. But I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm a huge nerd, so that helps. Do differential equations help in programming? I mean, they're useful in a lot of ways. I remember I took a diff-EQ class in college, and I just remember it being like recognize a pattern and then apply like an equate like this method for solving the problem. But like I don't know, I thought diff-EQ was incredibly boring in college, but maybe my teacher just was like only okay or whatever. But yeah, they're incredibly helpful. Differential equations are like um they describe state-like programs. I don't think he means this as like a programming thing. I think he's just trying to like or differential calculus. I'm thinking about differential equations, which I guess are the same thing, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not a mathematician. Yeah, I think Purescript is the choice here because he's trying to give you all the tools, you know, like um he wants to take you into the complete depths of FP. So like you don't have to like if you learn this book, you would be able to apply all of these concepts to, for example, Haskell, but they also already apply to like Elm, for example. Like you don't get that far. uh Nin I this comment is very funny to me. Uh so is the chapter 3 because the author doesn't realize they're explaining too much at one time or are so arrogant they refuse to break it down further, not realizing they spent 10 years themselves. Yeah. I hope it's not the latter, but I think that it's very hard to write good technical books. Like really, I think that's just true. Okay, let's keep going. Just not enough. I felt this way with many Haskell books. I read them and thought I had a pretty good understanding. Go online. Da, 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 da. Yeah, so I think this is a really common complaint with, for example, what is that one called? Learn You a Haskell for Great Good. Like when you read it, you're like, oh yeah, this is great. Um, and it's certainly a great introduction to the language, but it doesn't get you from like Haskell, learning Haskell the language to writing like actual programs in Haskell or reading library code of other people's software. So yeah, I can see how I know a lot of people get tripped up by that. Yeah, that was my so like my my path would definitely hit this stepping stone. So I feel this comment like pretty deeply. Like I started in Scala land trying to learn, and I did the red book, and I had a hard time with that book because Scala is just like it's not natural to express these programs, and so it's like you kind of have there's a little bit more barrier to entry there. Like once you understand the concepts, I think writing them in Haskell or sorry in Scala wouldn't be that bad, but like learning them in Scala was pretty tricky. And then I did learn you a Haskell, and I was like, oh cool, Haskell's great, I really like this, but then I couldn't write anything, and then like yeah, I kept going down the path. Well, that's when I started streaming, and here we are. Okay, XYZ. Yeah, yep. I've definitely opened books like this. I don't have a great example of one in the Haskell world at the moment, but yeah, maybe somebody else has an example, but I can't come up with one offhand. The XYZ version of a Haskell book. Anyway. Mhm. Yeah, I really like this statement. Yeah, I really like the or yeah, this statement specifically. Um like I have been doing Haskell for almost 3 4 years or something. How long have I been doing Haskell? Gosh, I don't even know. I think it's close to 3 years. And like I still feel like I don't know the entirety of the language. So, there's always more to learn. And the Z is like give us enough of the tools to like continue going down that path, I think. I like that statement a lot. Okay, so Purescript. It was already mentioned. Purescript's a pretty niche language. Some of you may have never even heard of Purescript before, like looking at this book. So what is it? Why not Haskell Elm? And then more of this. Okay, cool. Purescript, purely functional language that compiles to JavaScript. Yeah, like people may have like cursory knowledge of it from the fact that like Haskell exists, for example. What time is it, by the way? Okay. So like I'm the goal is to stream in the morning, and then I have to go to work because I have a job. So I will have to leave around 9 o'clock. Okay, so it can be run both the server or sorry the browser and on the server. Pretty much anything you can write JavaScript can be written in PureScript. Uh, PureScript has stolen a lot from Haskell. In fact, the syntax coloring for Markdown and ASCII doc was both written with simply use Haskells. Most of the developers got their start in Haskell, and the PureScript compiler is written in Haskell, as is Elm's compiler. Yeah, I think like this is a good statement to point out. I think they like removed some of the oddities or like the legacy kind of Haskell stuff, and so PureScript's kind of like just a version of Haskell with less cruft. Cool. Is this actually true? I thought it would be like it takes quite a while to get on your machine, if I recall correctly. We'll have to find out. Well, it's already on my machine, and I guess I just install it with Nix. But anyway, why not Haskell or Elm or other language? Haskell is an old language, 30 years old. Research language, lots of extensions. Yeah, and the other thing about it is like a lot of these extensions are kind of necessary to use it in most cases, or to make it feel more modern anyway. Yep, I would agree with that. Yep. Yeah, especially from like a front end developer standpoint. If you're just writing like a backend server, it's a different story, but it's quite good for that. But I've actually not had a ton of experience doing the like full front end experience with Haskell, but it doesn't seem like particularly easy. Although IHP exists now, and I don't know if IHP is considered better in some respect. Again, I haven't done enough to like tell you yes or no. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think I've had issues with the Purescript stuff in Vim before, but I haven't tried it recently, so maybe it's a little bit better now. I don't know. This isn't as compelling for me, but like, it's not compelling. If that makes sense. Yep. Yeah. I think I saw an article from Checkser about this as well, who's on the stream occasionally. Mm-hmm. I'm not used Reason. Oh, I should point this out. Hang on. Let me write this because I would like to tell Charles if I find stuff like this. So this is page 10. Elixir is spelled wrong. Okay. Um, I think that out of these ones, Idris is probably the most usable. Well, okay. From my standpoint, right? I already told you that I really like static types, so that takes closure. I think Agda is more complicated and more difficult, but like it could take you beyond that Z, right? You have that Z, and then you need to go beyond that. That could be Agda. And I think Reason Hamel has changed names, hasn't it? Isn't it called something else now? I don't know. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Thanks, Hater. I thought that's what the name was. Maybe I should mention that as well. But I think that's relatively recent, right? Like it's not. It's in within maybe the last year and a half that it changed names because there was like Reason ML and then some other name, and then they were like, oh well, why don't we just put these things together? And then okay, thanks, Hater. Appreciate that. Okay. Unfortunately, we're not doing any programming today, really, Hater. So I apologize if this is just kind of boring, but I promise we will. I don't think I've seen your name on the stream before, so want to let you know. Haskell plus plus. Nice. Okay. Oh, nice. Cool. How do you like it so far? I'm pretty interested in this book. Like, I don't know how much I'll learn, but I want to complete the book so that I can definitively say yes, you should probably pick up this book if you're learning FP. It's not a terrible joke. It's a goofy joke. Okay. everything I want to teach in this book, only Haskell and Purescript are advanced enough that they would work. Is this true? Like you could do this in Idris or Agda, I guess, but also those aren't used all that often in like real world situations. Not that Haskell and Purescript are, but they are more used. Great. That's good to know. I'm excited about this. More advanced. Yep. Yeah, like I guess you can keep going. Like if you want to take Idris on or Agda on after this, you should be able to. You should have all the tools. That's fair. Okay, the four-part harmony. We have beginner, intermediate, advanced, and beyond. Uh, I mean, I think that somewhere in here we're gonna hopefully learn some stuff, or at least like solidify some of our knowledge about FP. I feel like I don't use I don't use the advanced to beyond advanced features of Haskell all that often, and so maybe we'll pick up some tricks in within this book in those sections. But yes, the beginner and intermediate sections, are gonna I'll be able to hopefully progress through them relatively quickly. But again, like if people have questions or comments or like want to explore stuff that we're working on, we should do that together, because I think that's the funnest part about doing these books, is working on them with you guys. Cool. Ooh, yeah, that's what we want to do. The best part about doing the books on stream is like coding with everyone. So we definitely want to do some coding soon. hmm just out of curiosity, Hater, how far are you in the book? Folds, type classes, and functors, all incredibly useful concepts. Yeah. CT, end of chapter 3. Cool. CT is something that I constantly bounce off of. So like this is definitely not necessary uh, for learning FP. There are probably benefits to learning CT, but like I don't know, it's really hard. Yeah, definitely. Like, I feel like it took me a long time to install PureScript, but maybe there's something new here that I wasn't aware of. I usually just use Nix to install PureScript, but last I remember, like I stack installed it maybe, and it took like 30 minutes to like build and get on my machine. But I don't know. Again, things probably have changed since I last did that. It's an npm package now. Okay, yeah, then it should be pretty easy. Does it require you to have a Haskell compiler? Okay, yeah, then it definitely has changed, because the last time I definitely it required stack when I installed it for sure. So that's actually pretty awesome. Okay, yep, cool, neat, beyond. This is cool. Like I'm actually excited about this because uh I didn't even know that you could write PureScript as like a backend component. So I'd be interested to see how this works. Although I don't know that I would ever choose this in any real world situation. Like I would probably just choose Haskell and Servant or Yesed, but we'll have to see. Oh no. Yeah. I mean, I agree with these statements. I I like exercises a lot. But you know, this part's dumb. Lumi, let's see here. Purescript just compiles JavaScript, so that obviously works for many environments. Yeah, exactly. No, I do not. Be supers ban forever. Is this the right one? No, it's this one. Goodbye. Okay, so the exercises here presented here will be different. I'll first give you a problem, then you'll stop reading and try them on your own. If you get stuck along the way, return the book and keep reading. Yeah, like this was the one thing that stood out to me about this book is like there's an interesting set of like the way the exercises work is very interesting. So we'll see how this works. I'm hoping that it's very similar to like the way that I wish I taught like all the time. So we'll see how it goes. It's trickier in a textual medium. A hint. Cool. Yeah, this is great. I think that's super cool. Yeah, this is where Charles and I differ because I do not skip the exercises because the only way I can ever get past the chapters in the book. In any book, like yeah, this is why like skipping the exercises will never get this. Like that's super important. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is part of the reason why it's so long, by the way. Like just because we're doing this. Oh, it literally says that as the next sentence. That's hilarious. Okay. Yeah. So okay, I one of this is one of my teaching philosophies actually, is I used to write like when I wrote exercises for students to complete, I would write them intentionally vague such that they would have to develop their own understanding of the problem before writing it. So like whatever code they wrote, as long as it did what they wanted it to do, I was actually okay with that. Like if they could describe this is what I wanted to do and here's the code I wrote to do that, that is actually totally fine for me. And if they made mistakes along the way or made mistakes, like if they tried something and it didn't work and then they tried something else and that didn't work, that's good. Like you learn by making humans learn by making mistakes. My biggest issue with tons of books, presentations, whatever it may be, and again, this is hard in certain presentations, but they show you the happy path. And if you only see the happy path, it's really hard for you to like comprehend all of the pieces. And so making mistakes is really helpful. Um yeah. Anyway, that's a rant, but this particular sentence I feel incredibly strongly about. Okay, especially as a teacher. So hater. People are choosing Python for the back end. Well, it's the slowest language on earth. Yeah, a user it means back end. Um, yeah, that's like an interesting way to put it. I know that there's a lot of work being done in Python to make it fast, but that's also like why Node.js is fast, right? People have spent a ton of time thinking about how to speed up the um, Node. Yeah, identity. I'm trying something new where I stream before work. So that like the idea is I get up at 6 a.m., which is like hard but new and I'm getting used to it. I stream for a little bit and then I go to work. And then that way when I'm done with work, I can be at home and like enjoy my evenings. So I'm going to try streaming more in the morning and like trying to stream more because I really love streaming and I miss it when I'm not doing it. So I want to do it more. Okay. This is why you'll see hundreds and hundreds of compiler errors. So huge, 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 huge. Understand your compiler. Like it should be a symbiotic relationship when you have an error. You should say, "Hey, Mr. Compiler, what's my error?" And the compiler will say, "Here's your error." And if you don't understand that, how are you ever going to solve your problem? And I feel like I have a very nice symbiotic relationship with Haskell now. Even when I get really, really nasty errors, um, like I can find usually like the spot where it's giving me a problem, or I know how to prod my code to make the compiler give me a better error. So like this is super important. Yeah, I don't have a opinion about C++ errors because I just remember them being really hard to understand. But I also wasn't an expert. Nice, that's good to know. I think we're gonna have fun with this book, which is really something I kind of need to do. I feel like the stuff I've been doing recently, streaming hasn't been fun, and so I need to like bring fun back to my streams. So I'm glad I'm doing this book. Yeah, wonderful. I heavily resonate with those statements. Yeah, yeah. I think there's definitely a barrier to entry with GHC for sure. Uh, but like I feel like I now when I get errors, I almost always know how to interpret them. I had one yesterday that I was having a little trouble with, and I had to like prod at the code, but I was able to figure it out in the end. The like just knowing the types was what got me past the error, like understanding of it. So yeah, and I agree with you, Hater. I remember first starting Purescript, and like I was trying to write halogen code, which is already complicated. Um, and I was blown away. Like I had no idea what they meant, but I'm getting better. Okay, so many pages. Cannot access untouchable variable. I don't even know what that means. You would have to give me an example. I don't know that I've ever seen cannot access untouchable variable. Oh, okay. Yeah, then you're probably doing some pretty nasty uh type level stuff. I really want to finish this chapter before 9 o'clock, so I might. I love chatting with you. That's the best part about this. But I do want to get this done. How much longer do we? Oh, it's almost over. Okay, so we're fine. We'll probably just finish this today. And I think it was like a really nice getting started stream. We had some nice conversations, I think. And yeah, it's good. Then we'll raid somebody, which is always fun. Um, yep. Following the types, like just letting the types guide you along, gets you so far. And I think that's the beauty of functional programming for me is like you're putting a puzzle together most of the time, and like that's so much easier than having to think really carefully about like, well, this needs to go up here, and then I need to do this, and then I need to do this. It's just like just assemble the program for me. And I think identity would tell you, well, Idris like does it for you in most cases, which is super cool. Is actually this is an interesting question. Is the reason Idris is able to do that because of the dependent types? Like, does it make it easier because it's dependent, or is like I think maybe you've seen Wingman and Haskell. Like, is that it seems like that works too, but I wasn't sure if like the dependent nature of Idris makes it easier to fill in code for you. Yeah, I think that this is also kind of like reading the book has been nice because I'm already seeing that very heavy amount of truncation. Nice. Big fan. Oh, sorry. The question was like I've seen like in your streams like you'll fill in a hole and then Idris will fill in the code for you. Like it'll do like whatever code splitting, and so a lot of times it almost looks like you're not writing code, like you're just thinking about the problem and letting Idris do the work for you. Um, is that driven strongly because Idris is dependent, or is it just that someone has spent a lot of time doing it and like Haskell could have this as well without being dependent? That's the question. Page countdown. Okay. So it's a much harder problem in Haskell world, but somebody's working on it. So what you bring to the table is far more important. The effort you put in, yeah. This is huge. Like this is so huge. Um, if you don't do the exercises, if you don't like read carefully and think carefully, you're wasting your own time. So yeah. And, I think that oh, hang on. I think another thing to point out here is like the first time you see these content concepts, most likely they're not gonna click, and it'll take like practice and examples to go through them. So if you don't understand something the first time, like don't worry about it. Do it again in like a week. It doesn't need to be this content. Like let's say we're talking about I don't know. I've been thinking about Reader recently because I'm doing something at work with Reader. Um, and so, like, if you didn't understand Reader when we came up with it, when we did it in this book, like, look for it in another piece of code or a blog post or something and read about Reader in another way. But don't do it right away. Do it later and just keep practicing. So, like, I think I did this in Haskell and it worked out really nicely. Like, I went super deep, but not, or sorry, how do I say this? I went for breath. Like I want to see as much as I can. And then in the pieces where I had trouble, I started going deep. And that was super helpful for me. So when you get, I think that this is important. Cool. Um, let's see. Okay, cool. So that was, I get part 0. Is that what it was called? I guess it should be here. Excuse me. Not, what's, I don't remember what that is. Is this? No. Hang on. What was this called? Preface? Sorry about scrolling so much. Introduction. So there's the introduction of the book, and I think it's going to be really fun. I'm actually really pumped about it. Let me put this in the chat if you're interested. Again, you don't have to buy this. Like I don't get anything for you buying it, but FP dash made easier on LeanPub. I'm pretty excited about the book, and we'll do it on stream. So at the end of these, if you've never seen these streams before, basically the plan is any code that I write will end up on GitHub, and any of these videos will end up on YouTube.